Her father didn't even look at her when he said it. "Take her sister," Lord Aldrich said, gesturing toward the doorway where Seraphine stood draped in ivory silk, her golden hair catching the firelight like a crown already sat upon her head. "She is the one we prepared for you, Your Majesty, the one worthy of your court." Ilara stood in the far corner of the great hall, half hidden behind a stone pillar, her hands folded tight against her apron. She had not been invited to sit. She had not been offered wine. She had been brought along to pour it. The Alpha King of Thornwall did not respond immediately. He sat at the head of Lord Aldrich's long oak table, one hand wrapped around a goblet he had not touched, his black cloak pooling across the chair like spilled ink. His advisors flanked him. His beta, a scarred man named Kale, and two ranked warriors whose hands had not left their sword hilts since they entered. The entire room smelled of tension. Pine smoke from the hearth, cold iron, fear. King Kale Blackmere had not smiled once since arriving. He had not complimented the hall, the wine, the food, or the daughter who had been paraded before him in 3 different gowns since midday. His dark eyes had moved across the room with the flat, measured patience of a predator who did not need to rush because nothing in this territory could outrun him. He was the most powerful alpha alive. Every wolf within 6 territories knew his name, and most had learned it as a warning. His kingdom was vast, his army unmatched, and his curse, whispered about in every pack from the northern ice fields to the southern cliffs, had made him something worse than feared. He was pitied. 300 years without warmth. 300 years since the witch Morvenna had torn the bond from his chest and sealed his capacity to feel behind a wall of ice so absolute that even his wolf had gone silent. He ruled with precision. He fought with devastating efficiency, but he had not felt the sun on his skin, had not tasted food, had not slept without waking to frost crawling across his chamber walls, in longer than most bloodlines had existed. He had come to Lord Aldrich's keep because his council demanded it. "You need an alliance," Kale had told him. "You need the appearance of stability. Choose a bride from a noble house. It does not need to be a mate bond. It needs to be a signature on a treaty." So he had come, and Lord Aldrich, a minor lord with an inflated sense of his own importance, and a territory bordering the eastern trade route Kale needed access to, had spent the entire day trying to sell him his eldest daughter, like a merchant hawking silk at market. Seraphine was beautiful. Kale could acknowledge this the way he acknowledged architecture, with detached assessment. She had smiled at him 6 times. She had touched his arm twice. She had laughed at things he had not intended to be amusing. He had felt nothing. He had expected to feel nothing. He always felt nothing. And then Lord Aldrich said, "Take her sister." And Kale's wolf, silent for 3 centuries, dormant so long he had forgotten the weight of its presence, lifted its head. It was not a sound, not a growl, not a whine. It was a shift in the architecture of his own mind, like a door opening in a house he had believed bricked shut. His wolf turned its attention toward the far corner of the room, and Kale's eyes followed before his mind understood why. The girl behind the pillar. She was not dressed for presentation. Her gown was grey, worn soft at the elbows, hemmed unevenly at the ankle. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple braid, and there was a fading bruise along her jaw that someone had attempted to cover with powder. She held a clay pitcher of wine against her chest like a shield, and she was watching. Not him, but her father. With an expression so carefully controlled, it told him everything about what lay beneath it. She was afraid, but not of him. Cale set down his goblet. The sound of it meeting the oak table was quiet, but every wolf in the room heard it like a crack of thunder. "What is her name?" he asked. Lord Aldrich blinked. "Your Majesty?" "The girl." Cale did not look away from her. "In the corner, holding the wine. What is her name?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Seraphine's smile vanished. Lord Aldrich's hand tightened on the arm of his chair. She is no one, Your Majesty. A lesser daughter. She was not meant to be presented. She serves the household. If she has offended by her presence, I will have her removed immediately. Her name. The command was quiet. It was also absolute. The two warriors behind Cale shifted their weight subtly, a movement so practiced it was nearly invisible, and Lord Aldrich's face lost what remained of its color. "Ilara," he said. "Her name is Ilara." Cale stood. The room flinched. When an alpha king stands, the air itself seems to compress, as if his presence displaces something fundamental, as if the space was not quite large enough to contain what he was. Cale's hand moved to his blade by reflex, then stilled when he realized his king was not reacting to a threat. Cale walked to her. He moved past Seraphine without a glance, past the table laid with silver and roasted game and imported wine that had been chosen specifically to impress him, past Lord Aldrich, whose mouth opened and closed without producing sound. His boots were silent on the stone floor. His cloak swept behind him like a shadow with weight. Ilara did not step back. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her chin up to meet his eyes, close enough that she could see the frost that edged his collar, the unnatural cold that radiated from him like heat in reverse. His eyes were the color of winter storms, grey and deep and ancient. And when they met hers, something behind them flickered. Not warmth, not yet, but the memory of a place where warmth had once lived. "Ilara," he said. His voice was low, not soft. It was incapable of softness, honed by centuries of command into something that resonated in the chest rather than the ears. But the way he said her name was different from the way her father had. Lord Aldrich had said it like an apology for a stain on the furniture. Cale said it like he was testing whether the word could hold the weight he suddenly needed it to carry. "Your Majesty." Her voice was steady. The pitcher in her hands did not tremble, though her knuckles were white around it. She met his gaze directly, which no wolf in his own court dared to do. "You are Lord Aldrich's daughter." "I am." "And you serve this household, in your father's hall, as, what, a maid?" Something moved behind her eyes. Not shame, something older and harder than shame. "I do what is required of me." Cale studied her for a long moment. His wolf pressed against the inside of his chest with a force he had not felt in 300 years. And he understood, with the sudden, terrible clarity of a man who has been drowning and has just broken the surface, that he was not going to leave this hall without her. He turned to Lord Aldrich. "I will take this one." The silence was absolute. Seraphine made a sound, a small, strangled intake of breath. Lord Aldrich rose from his chair, his face cycling through disbelief, anger, and finally a desperate, grasping calculation. "Your Majesty, I must. She is not trained for court. She has no education in diplomacy, no—" "I did not ask for a diplomat. She cannot even shift." The words burst from Lord Aldrich like something he had meant to keep caged. The admission hung in the air, and Cale watched Alara's jaw tighten. Not at the revelation, but at the way her father wielded it, like a flaw, like proof of deficiency. "She has never shifted," Lord Aldrich continued, his voice dropping as if sharing an embarrassment. "Not once. We do not know what she is. She may not even carry the wolf. She is incomplete, Your Majesty. Seraphine is everything you—" "Cale." Cale did not raise his voice. "Prepare the horses. We leave within the hour." His beta moved without hesitation. Cale had served Cale for a century and a half. He did not question. He did not clarify. He read the air in the room, read something in his king's face he had never seen before, and he moved. Cale looked at Alara. "Do you have belongings to gather?" She stared at him. For the first time, her composure cracked. Not into fear, but into confusion so raw it made her look younger. "You are asking me?" "I am." "No one has—" She stopped herself, swallowed, straightened. "I have very little. It will not take long." "Then go. I will wait." She set the pitcher down on the nearest table with careful precision, as if the act of releasing it cost her something. The last prop of a role she had been performing her entire life. Then she walked out of the hall, past her father who did not reach for her, past her sister, whose beautiful face had twisted into something Cale filed away for future consideration. She did not run. She did not thank him. She simply walked, with her shoulders straight and her bruised jaw held high, through the door and out of sight. Cale remained standing in the center of Lord Aldrich's hall, surrounded by a feast prepared for a king, and felt, for the first time in 300 years, the faintest crack in the ice behind his ribs. It hurt. He had forgotten that feeling anything at all would begin with pain. The ride to Thornwall took 2 days, and Alara spoke only when spoken to. She rode a chestnut mare provided by Cale, positioned in the center of the column between 2 ranked warriors who had been instructed, not by Cale, but by Cale, who understood his king's unspoken orders better than anyone, to ensure no harm reached her. She sat her horse well. She did not complain about the cold, though frost gathered on her cloak by nightfall, and her breath came in white clouds that reminded Cale, with a pang he was not equipped to process, that she was warm, and he was not. On the first night, camped at the edge of the ashwood, Cale found her sitting alone by the fire, while his men ate and spoke in low voices on the far side of camp. She was staring into the flames with the particular stillness of someone accustomed to being invisible. He sat across from her. The fire between them hissed and spat. His presence did not warm the air. It chilled it, subtly, the way his curse always did, frost creeping along the grass near his boots. "You did not ask me why," he said. She looked up. The firelight caught the bruise on her jaw and turned it amber. "Would the answer change where I am sitting?" "No." "Then it does not matter yet." She paused. "You are cold." It was not a question. She said it the way someone might note that the sky was overcast. An observation, factual and direct, without pity or performance. "Yes," he said. It was the first time anyone had simply stated it to his face. His court tiptoed around it. His enemies whispered about it. She looked at him across a campfire and named it like weather. How long? 300 years. She was quiet for a long time. The fire crackled between them. A wolf, a real one, not a shifted pack member, howled somewhere deep in the ashwood, and the sound was so lonely it seemed to come from inside the earth itself. That is a long time to be cold, she said finally. Not sympathy, not a solution, just the simple, devastating acknowledgement that what he carried was heavy, and she could see it. Something shifted behind Cale's sternum. The crack from the hall widened by a fraction, imperceptible, agonizing, like ice expanding before it splits. His wolf pressed forward, and for a fleeting, disorienting moment, he thought he felt the heat of the fire. Then it was gone. He stood and walked back to his tent without another word, because he did not trust what would happen if he stayed. Thornwall was a fortress carved into the mountain itself. Black stone and iron, towers that disappeared into low clouds, a great hall with a vaulted ceiling where the cold clung to every surface like a living thing. The hearths were lit but gave no comfort. The tapestries were ancient and beautiful and rigid with frost. Elara was given chambers in the east wing, not the servants' quarters but not the royal floor. A careful, deliberate middle ground that told the court she was neither guest nor prisoner, neither lady nor Luna. The ambiguity was intentional, Cale's doing, buying time while the court tried to understand what their king had brought home and why. Lady Vela understood immediately. She was the daughter of the previous beta, a woman of immaculate breeding and strategic intelligence who had positioned herself as the foremost candidate for Luna in the decades since the curse made the prospect both prestigious and miserable. She was tall, sharp-featured, with copper hair and green eyes that missed nothing. She had been patient, she had been calculated, and she had watched Cale Blackmere walk past every eligible noblewoman in 6 territories without a flicker of interest for 30 years. Then he returned from a minor lord's keep with a bruised, shiftless, nameless girl, and Vela's patience became something with teeth. She cannot even shift, Vela said to the gathered court, 3 days after Elara's arrival, her voice carrying across the great hall with the practiced projection of someone who knew exactly how to weaponize a whisper. An alpha king requires a Luna who can run beside him, who can defend the pack, who can bear wolves, not... She let the silence finish the sentence for her. Elara, seated at the far end of the lower table where she had placed herself, not where she had been assigned, which was closer to the king's dais, a distinction Cale had noticed, did not react visibly. She continued eating with the methodical focus of someone who had learned not to waste food. But Cale, seated on the wolf throne at the hall's head, felt his wolf stir with an anger so sudden and ancient it startled him. His fingers tightened on the arm of the throne, and frost spread from beneath his hand, crawling across the carved wood in jagged patterns. Cale, standing behind him, placed one hand on the back of the throne, a grounding gesture, a reminder. Cale breathed. The frost stopped. But he did not forget. On the 7th night, Elara found the garden. It had been a garden once, a walled enclosure behind the east wing with stone pathways and raised beds and an archway that must have been covered in climbing roses before the curse. Now it was dead. Every plant blackened and brittle, the soil frozen solid. The fountain at its center, locked in a perpetual moment of stillness. Water turned to sculptured ice mid-flow. She stood in the center of it, her breath clouding in the unnatural cold. and she pressed her bare hand against the frozen earth. "Nothing grows here," Cale said from the archway. He had not meant to follow her. He was not certain why he had. "Not yet," she said, and the quiet certainty in her voice made something inside him clench. "It has been dead for 300 years. She looked up at him. "So have you, and you are standing here." The silence between them was not empty. It was full, dense and electric, charged with something neither of them named. His wolf pressed against his ribs so hard he thought they might crack, and Cale took a step toward her before he could stop himself. He stopped, 3 feet away, close enough to see the way her pulse beat at her throat, close enough to smell something beneath the cold. Lavender, warm skin, something that called to a part of him he thought the curse had killed. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" The question came out rougher than he intended, dragged from somewhere deep and unguarded. "Everyone in this fortress is afraid of me. My own beta watches me for signs of fracture. You sit in my hall and eat bread and look at me as if I am a person," she finished quietly. "I look at you as if you are a person. Is that so unusual?" His hand moved before his mind approved it. He reached out and touched the bruise on her jaw, healed now to a faint yellow shadow nearly gone, with the tips of his fingers. The contact lasted less than a second, but Alara's breath caught, and Cale felt it. Heat, a single, searing point of warmth where his skin touched hers. So intense after centuries of nothing that his vision blurred. His hand shook. He pulled it back as if burned, and stared at his own fingers with an expression that, on any face less controlled, would have been terror. "What are you?" he whispered. She did not answer, because she did not know. If you're enjoying this story, take a moment to hit that like button. It helps me know you want more like this. Vela moved on the 9th day. She did not attack Alara directly. She was far too intelligent for that. Instead, she sent a letter, sealed with the crest of a minor house to obscure its origin, to the rival Alpha of Greymore, a wolf named Torren, who had spent decades probing Thornwall's borders for weakness. The letter contained 3 pieces of information: that the Alpha King's wolf had responded to an unshifted, unranked woman with no bloodline, that his curse appeared to be fracturing, and that the girl was unprotected, unclaimed, and could be taken. Cale intercepted the messenger at the eastern gate. The letter was brought to Cale in his private chambers, where he read it once, folded it with deliberate care, and set it on the table beside the cup of wine he still could not taste. "Bring Lady Vela to the throne room," he said. "Now." The trial, if it could be called that, lasted 4 minutes. Vela stood before the wolf throne in the great hall, the full court assembled, her copper hair immaculate, her posture rigid with the particular dignity of someone who still believed they could negotiate their way out of ruin. The letter lay on the arm of the throne, its seal broken. "You invited an enemy Alpha into my territory," Cale said. His voice was quiet, conversational, the kind of quiet that precedes avalanches. "You endangered my people. You endangered—" He stopped. The pause was so brief, most wolves would not have caught it, but Cale did. Ilara, standing near the wall, did. He had almost said her. "You endangered the security of this pack for personal ambition." Vela lifted her chin. "I acted in the interest of Thornwall. That girl is not fit. You do not determine fitness." His eyes flickered, grey to amber to something that was neither, something ancient and lupine that made several wolves in the front row take an involuntary step back. "I do." and I have determined yours." He stood. The frost on the throne crept outward, across the dais, down the steps. The hall dropped 10 degrees. Lady Vela is stripped of rank and removed from this court. Her family's holdings revert to the crown. She will leave Thornwall before dawn. If she is found within my borders after sunrise, she will be treated as the enemy collaborator she has proven herself to be. Vela's composure shattered. "You cannot. For that shiftless nothing? For a girl who doesn't even know what she is? Your wolf is broken, Kale. The curse has rotted your—" "Remove her." 2 warriors stepped forward. Vela was escorted from the hall, her protests echoing off the stone walls, and then gone. Kale stood on the dais, breathing hard, frost still radiating from him in waves, and his eyes found Elara across the room. She was not smiling. She was not triumphant. She was looking at him with something that broke through every wall he had built. Not awe, not fear, not gratitude, understanding. And the crack in his chest split wider, and this time he felt it. Not just the pain, but what lay behind it. Something warm and vast and terrifying, pressing against the ice from the inside, demanding to be let through. That night, the curse struck back. Kale collapsed in his chambers, ice erupting from his skin in jagged crystalline formations that tore through his shirt and embedded in the stone floor. The cold was so intense that the water in the basin across the room froze solid, and the glass shattered. His wolf howled inside him. Not the silence of 3 centuries, but a raw, agonized sound that vibrated through the bond he did not yet understand. Elara heard it. Not with her ears, she heard it in her chest, in the marrow of her bones, in a place she had never known existed until it was filled with his pain. She was out of bed and running before she understood why, bare feet on frozen stone, through corridors that crackled with ice, past guards who shouted at her and then fell silent when they saw where she was going. She found him on the floor of his chambers, frost crawling up the walls, his body rigid, his eyes open and blind with pain. The ice had reached his throat. His hands were clawed, half-shifted, the bones of his fingers not quite human. She knelt beside him. "Don't touch." Kale was behind her, his voice sharp with fear. "The cold will—" She placed both hands on his chest. The cold hit her like a wall of black water. It was not temperature. It was absence. 300 years of stolen feeling compressed into a single, annihilating force that tried to devour her warmth, her breath, her heartbeat. She felt it reach for the center of her, hungry and ancient and furious at the intrusion. She did not pull away. Something inside her answered. Not a wolf, or not only a wolf. Something older, something that had slept in her bloodline for generations. Dormant, because no one had ever told her it was there. It rose like a tide, golden, fierce, impossibly warm, and poured through her palms into the frozen wasteland of his body. The ice screamed. There was no other word for it. A high, keening sound that resonated through the stone, through the mountain itself, as the curse that had held Kale Blackmere for 3 centuries met something it could not consume. Elara's hands blazed with light. Her eyes, dark brown her entire life, burned gold. The ice shattered. It did not melt. It broke, explosively, violently. Every crystal fracturing at once in a cascade that swept outward from where her hands met his chest. The frost on the walls cracked and fell. The frozen basin thawed in a rush of water. The unnatural cold that had defined Thornwall for 300 years recoiled like a living thing, pulling inward, contracting, fighting, and losing. Cale gasped. His back arched off the floor, and the sound he made was not a growl or a roar, but a breath. The first real breath he had drawn in 3 centuries, dragged in with the desperate, shuddering force of a man who had forgotten what air tasted like. His eyes cleared, his hands unclenched. His wolf surged forward, not in violence, but in recognition. A howl that shook the walls and was answered, from somewhere deep in the mountains, by wolves who had not sung in living memory. He looked up at her. She was kneeling over him, her hands still on his chest, golden light fading from her eyes, and she was shaking. Not from fear, from the effort of holding back an ocean with her bare hands and winning. Lara. His voice was raw, cracked, new. He said her name the way the devout speak prayers, as if the word itself could save him. He reached up and touched her face, and his hand was warm. Warm. His eyes went wide. He turned his own hand over, staring at it as if seeing it for the first time. Then he looked back at her, and his expression, the expression of a man who has lived in darkness so long he forgot light existed, and is now standing in the sun, broke something in every wolf who witnessed it. I feel you, he whispered. I feel everything. Ilara's composure, the armor she had worn her entire life, the careful steadiness that had carried her through every cruelty and every dismissal, finally cracked. Tears slid down her cheeks, and she laughed, a broken, incredulous, beautiful sound. Good, she said. It's about time. He pulled her down to him and kissed her, and the kiss was not gentle. It was 300 years of winter ending in a single, devastating thaw. Heat flooding through every frozen vein, warmth pouring into every hollow space. His wolf and the golden fire in her blood singing the same note for the first time. His hand tangled in her hair. Her fingers gripped the torn fabric of his shirt. The air around them shimmered with warmth so intense that Cale, standing in the doorway, had to step back. When they finally broke apart, Cale pressed his forehead to hers and breathed. Just breathed. Because he could feel the air, and it was warm, and she smelled like lavender, and he was alive. I choose you, he said. Not a whisper, a declaration, rough-edged and absolute, spoken in the voice of a king who had just rediscovered what it meant to want something. Before the court, before every alpha who questions it, before every wolf in every territory, I choose you, Ilara. Not because the bond demands it, because you looked at a frozen man and saw someone worth warming. The coronation took place on a morning so bright the oldest wolves in Thornwall could not remember its equal. Cale stood before the wolf throne, the frost gone from its surface for the first time in 3 centuries, the carved wood dark and warm beneath his hands, and placed the luna's circlet on Ilara's head. It was silver and iron, forged with moonstone, and it sat on her dark hair as if it had been waiting for her. The court knelt, not all of them willingly. There were wolves who still questioned, wolves who still whispered about bloodlines and the shiftless girl who had somehow shattered the unbreakable. But they knelt, because their king's wolf was whole for the first time in living memory. And the power radiating from the pair on the dais was undeniable. Cale knelt last, and when he rose, there was something on his scarred face that Alara had never seen there before. Hope. 3 months later, the garden bloomed. Not all at once. First the climbing roses on the archway, then the wildflowers along the stone paths, then the herbs she had planted herself, on her knees in the thawed soil, dirt beneath her fingernails, and the luna's circlet forgotten on the bench beside her. The fountain ran clear. The water caught the sunlight and scattered it across the walls in patterns that moved like living things. Cale found her there most mornings, and most mornings he stood in the archway and simply watched her. The way she moved through the green and growing world, the way she hummed without realizing it, the way the light touched her shoulders. He felt the light now. He felt everything. The rough stone beneath his hand, the wind off the mountain, the ache in his muscles after sparring with Cale, the particular, devastating tenderness that settled in his chest when she looked up and saw him, and smiled as if his presence was something worth smiling about. A letter arrived from Lord Aldrich's keep on a Tuesday, carried by a rider who looked as though he had been ordered to deliver it at sword point. The seal was Aldrich's, pressed too hard into the wax, the mark of an unsteady hand. Alara read it in the garden, sitting on the bench beside the fountain. The letter was short. Her father expressed, in language so stiff it practically crackled, his deep regret for failing to recognize her value, his congratulations on her ascension, and his hope that the bond between their houses might be renewed under more favorable terms. He did not apologize for the bruise on her jaw. He did not mention the years of servitude. He called her Luna Alara 4 times, as though repetition might retroactively make him the kind of father who had believed in her. She folded the letter and set it on the bench. Cale sat beside her. He did not ask what it said. He could read the shape of it on her face. "Do you want to reply?" he asked. She was quiet for a moment, watching a bee move between the roses that had been dead wood 3 months ago. Then she shook her head. "I already did," she said. "The day I walked out of his hall with my shoulders straight." Cale took her hand. His palm was warm. Still a miracle. Still something that caught him off guard. The simple animal pleasure of touching another person and feeling it. She laced her fingers through his and leaned into his shoulder, and the garden hummed with life around them. Somewhere in the mountains beyond Thornwall, a wolf howled. Not in pain, not in loneliness. In something that sounded, to anyone listening with the right kind of heart, like joy. So tell me, where are you listening from tonight? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to know who's out there. And if this one hit you the way it hit me writing it, share your favorite moment below. Was it the garden, the kiss, or the moment he set down that cup and walked straight to her? Let me know. And if you haven't already, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Trust me, you're going to want to hear it.